weeknights at 6 on News Channel 3.
Arizona's news people.
Good morning from News Channel 3 with Mike Mohr, Jana Wallis, and Samantha Mohr. Arizona's news channel, News Channel 3.
2 people are trapped on top of their car by raging waters from a storm that swept into the valley. Good morning, everybody. It's certainly been the wettest day so far this year, and there's no doubt it has certainly taken its toll today.
From flooding to roof collapses to people sandbagging their homes, the valley has felt the full force of the storm. What you're looking at now is a live shot from News Chopper 3 of 47th Avenue and Indian School. Obviously, people waiting, cars stalled. That's been the story all morning long. And as Tom Olson tells us now, this drama began late last night.
For John and Nancy Nagarkar, it was to have been a leisurely drive to the airport, followed by a trip to Sacramento. But that trip never made it south of Stanford Drive. News Channel 3 photographer Arnold Espinoza was in this northeast Phoenix area early this morning, driving behind the Nagarkars. He, too, was looking for a safe route south. Photographer Espinoza abandoned the idea of crossing Stanford with the waters rushing north to south, and he looked for alternative side roads. 15 minutes later, when he arrived at a fire department rescue effort in a wash near the 40th Street and Stanford intersection, he was surprised to see that the couple being rescued was the same couple he had been following earlier. Crews had to cut their way through a wire fence to get to the two, stranded atop their small import. Crews then had to wade through the waters, fit the couple with life jackets and ropes, finally pulling them to safety.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It was kind of scary when we went down. It was too dark, we couldn't see. We were going to the airport, and it just took the car away, and we couldn't even get out in time before it hit.
After trying to take shortcuts across the high water intersection, their car had been forced into the adjacent wash, turned around, and then the two watched as water slowly began to creep up the car's side and into the windows.
The guys did a great job.
Yeah, the guys really helped us out.
Earlier, 2 young men had helped pull yet another stranded motorist from a similar position, just a few hundred feet from where the Nagarkars were stopped.
We helped that guy out of his car that was running down the water, and we just helped him out, and he asked us for a ride. We dried off my distributor cap, gave him a ride, and he hopped a ride with some other lady in a Jeep Cherokee to go, I don't know, call insurance or family or something.
The water was about up to the doors.
Yeah.
And that one came down.
Boy, it was almost all over the windows.
Did you think that you'd be able to get them out of there, that they would get out? He was on top of his roof. We just walked down to the water. It wasn't too deep there, and somehow his car kind of got lodged somewhere, and we just grabbed him out of the water.
Similar stories were unfolding in other valley areas. This car had been parked in a parking lot last night, only to take a trip of its own this morning. And still other crews were wading through the waters at the 64th Street and Invergordon area, where motorists had been stalled in mid-intersection. According to Rural Metro Fire Department's Matt Phillips, his department had crews readied with boats, waiting to wade in to even deeper waters if needed.
Basically, people don't pay attention to what's going on around them. Obviously, a wash like what's behind us right here is fairly deep and difficult to traverse in any type of a vehicle, yet people continue to attempt to try to cross them. Invariably, they manage to get stuck, and then it becomes a problem because we have to deploy a couple of fire trucks to go out here and pull these people out.
And as Tom mentioned to us, none of those individuals that were caught in the washes were injured. In fact, we at News Channel 3 have received no reports of injuries due to the flooding.
Well, the storm that rolled into the valley with its subsequent rains has certainly caused many problems for motorists all over the valley. We've got Dan Davis out and about to give us a look at traffic right now. Dan?
Michael, I tell you what, it's late morning, we're all wide awake, but it still seems like a bad dream. Dozens of intersections across the valley are still flooded. We'll estimate several hundred motorists have either been stalled or are stuck in watered intersections right now. And about the only way you can sum this up is to say that this is one of the worst commuting nightmares we've seen in a long, long time. The long night of rain got commuters in trouble early this morning, even before the sun was all the way up. Cars on Camelback Road and I-17 were merging left and trying to keep to the high side, but they still looked like an army fording a river in a war movie. As you might guess, not everybody made it through. This guy leaning on his arm pretty much says it all about his helpless frustration. Out in Scottsdale, cars on Hayden and Camelback Roads were moving along pretty well, but they would have been ticketed in a no-wake zone if this was really a lake.
Well, I should have turned left on Northern, and I didn't.
There were a lot of people like Jeannie Witt who realized too late that the area around 19th Avenue and Grand Avenue was one of the worst. This wasn't just a flooded street. It easily could be called the River Grand. Even the big boys got caught. So a lot of people in the little cars never had much of a chance.
And then there you were in it, and you didn't have any way to get out of it because there was cars on both sides and behind you, and then that stupid median, and then, so then I just kept going, and then this car in front of, the cars just stopped, and if they wouldn't have stopped, then I would have been fine, but then my car just started filling up with water, and then it just stalled.
And I'd say that pretty well sums up the frustration of motorists. What we're looking at now is a neighborhood just to the north of the Grand Canal, roughly Osborne Road and 40th Avenue, that was flooded out this morning. And what the residents have done, if you can kind of look down there by the canal, they've broken through the canal road and allowing the water to drain out. But we still have a huge mess down there. As you can see, that it's not just water that's in the houses and in the pools, it's muddy water. And so even though they've got that dike broken through and some of the water is starting to drain, once the water's gone, that's when the real mess begins, because you're going to have a lot of mud and debris and just a lot of junk on carpets and pools, and they've got a real mess on their hands and probably a couple of days at least of cleaning up.
Certainly have to hinge on that word mess. Thank you, Dan. Well, as Dan Davis just told us, there are many road closures, but high water is a problem as well. Take a look at this. These streets are closed. Hayden between McDowell and Indian School. Also Indian School, Camelback, and Chaparral west of Hayden, as well as Invergordon north of Lincoln. Also Lincoln Drive east of 32nd Street and southbound Pima at Thomas. These intersections have high water problems. 67th Avenue and Cactus, 75th Avenue and Bethany Home Road, 51st Avenue and Olive, and 61st Avenue between Northern and Dunlap. And in Mesa, high water is reported at Baseline and Ellsworth, Mesa Drive between 8th Street and Brown, McKellips between Hayden and Country Club, and Broadway between Mesa and Center Street. There is also high water reported along Grand Avenue as well as northern between 19th and 61st Avenues.
Well, all of this water, Mike, is causing some big problems for a local furniture store. Take a look at this. Part of the roof of the Levitt's furniture store located on West Indian School Road collapsed this morning. Just about an hour ago, crews were called to the store. When they arrived, they found one of the building's air conditioning units falling through the roof. You can see that the rainwater is built up on top of the building and more rain is still falling. There are no reports of injuries at the store and so far no word on damage inside.
Well, over the past week or so, the question on everyone's mind has been repeated over and over and over again. Just where, in fact, is the monsoon? Well, I think we have a pretty good idea where it is, but meteorologist Samantha Mohr joins us now to explain.
It came in a big way yesterday, and we've seen these heavy rainfall amounts overnight. It doesn't look like this heavy rainfall will continue, though. We have 12 hours of satellite imagery to show you here, and we are seeing things start to clear up just a bit to the south of the valley. Now, we have a couple of cells just south of the border in northern Mexico. I think we could see some development there later this afternoon, and we could see some more thunderstorm activity spring up probably late this afternoon or evening, especially if we see some good clearing and some good heating. If we get some breaks in the clouds and see some sunshine, that could make the thunderstorm conditions worse. Right now, we do have a flash flood watch in effect, and that includes the Phoenix and Tucson area. That's in effect until 9 p.m., so you'll want to keep your ear to the latest reports just in case.
And explain watch and warning just briefly for us.
Watch means that flash flooding could occur and not that it is imminent like a flash flood warning is.
Okay, thank you, Samantha.
Without power throughout Chandler, Mesa, and parts of Tempe this morning. Most of the power was restored, however, to those homes by 9. However, no such luck for 500 APS customers valley-wide. They still are without power. And if you're trying to make a phone call in the north and northeast sections of town, you're probably getting a busy signal. The rains have knocked out 2 telephone relay stations in that area. The rains are also causing problems for repairmen trying to get to the affected areas. Repairs are expected, though, to be finished up by noon.
Well, the rain certainly in the valley is a major story right here, but when we come back, we will have the rest of the day's news.
That your new baby is delicate.
W's and MIA families in suburban Washington when he was shouted down.
No, tell the truth.
The organizers of the event took the stage and restored order. The president continued, but once again was interrupted.
Will put my record up against anybody here. And would you please be quiet and let me finish? Would you please shut up and sit down? We came up...
Mr. Bush did finish his speech, and many members in the audience applauded his performance. President Bush, meanwhile, will meet with his national security advisors again tomorrow to discuss Iraq's refusal to cooperate with the UN weapons investigators. This morning, Bush's spokesman says the question of issuing an ultimatum for Iraq is still open and, indeed, under discussion. Meanwhile, in Iraq today, the UN inspection team that's been on a vigil in Baghdad is leaving Iraq. The team was unsuccessful in its efforts to get into a Ministry of Agriculture building. It's suspected the building is used to store weapons plans. The United States says military action is an option to force Iraq to comply. Secretary of State Baker is in Saudi Arabia today and says the United States will do whatever it takes to force Iraq into compliance.
While hundreds of soldiers scoured the rugged slopes of the Andes for Pablo Escobar, the escaped drug kingpin is demanding protection. Escobar sent a tape and phoned a radio station saying he's willing to surrender. The condition, however, he puts on his surrender is a guarantee of safety. He's promising not to unleash a new wave of violence against the government, even though he says the government violated an agreement by trying to transfer him to a military prison. It was during that transfer that Escobar escaped. Well, he was the man who became an anti-smoking crusader during his last days, but a 25-year-long smoking habit took its toll yesterday. The man who appeared in dozens of Marlboro cigarette ads, Wayne McLaren, has died.